Hey up, right, I'm a self-confessed motorcycle whore. I just love motorcycles, and I have since I was a teenager, and the advantage of running this channel is that it allows me to have more motorcycles than I previously had in a past life. Now, at this time of the year, I usually start to look at the possibility of bringing another channel bike onto the channel. I don't do it every single year. I've missed a year out here and there throughout the 10-year lifespan of this channel, but I always certainly look at it at this time of the year to try and sort of diversify the content that I can put out, because it's boring if you just basing everything on one particular model. Variety is the spice of life, I think is what I'm trying to say. Now, when I started this channel off, I was riding around on the big BMW GS Adventures. I've been on a fairly typical motorcycle journey, gone from small bikes to big bikes, and then back down to smaller bikes, and then back up to big bikes. It's sort of, searching for that perfect niche in my life. And then about 10 years ago I came to the conclusion that actually what I really want is just a traditional roadster, not necessarily a modern classic, but a traditional roadster, a do anything motorcycle, a bike that will do anything you want it to do, whether it be touring, commuting, or just days out and running errands. A bike like the bikes that I used to have, back in the early 1980s, just good traditional all-rounders, a modicum of sportiness and a lot of practicality. A bike that enhances and fits in with my lifestyle, rather than a bike that dictates what my lifestyle should be. But the only choice that you really had in that sort of subgroup of motorcycles 10 years ago was modern classics, bikes that hark back to those bikes that I love so much, practical all-round roadsters. And I got myself the Triumph Bonneville T120. Now, the problem with these Triumphs is that they are, of course, quite expensive motorcycles. They've placed themselves in the premium motorcycle market, and to my mind they were a little bit too much money for what they were. And then in 2019 along came Royal Enfield with its rebirth of new models, starting off with the Interceptor 650, a bike that could be had for about £5,500. Now, okay, it wasn't quite the same sort of quality motorcycle that I was used to, but the price was right, so you could see past its quality control quirks. Back then I used to joke that Royal Enfields are built 90 to 95% by Royal Enfield, and then it's left to the new owner to finish it off. And in that respect, I don't think that much has changed. We did see a period of time about 3 or 4 years ago where they did seem to up the quality a little bit. They weren't far behind the likes of the Japanese manufacturers and Triumph. But, and this is just my opinion, it seemed that they slipped back on that a little bit, and they were prioritising getting bikes out of the factory door rather than prioritising making sure that the quality of those bikes was absolute tip-top. But the price was right, so you could forgive Royal Enfield for that. At the end of the day, the quality issues were just minor niggles. The good, sturdy, reliable bikes. I've never had one let me down, and I've owned, 4 Royal Enfields over the course of the last few years. But what I have found is that getting those minor niggles sorted out through a warranty claim is a very long, frustrated and protracted experience. The first one took 6 months. The second one I gave up because they just wanted me to jump through too many hoops. The third one took 3 months. Now, in the early days, I made excuses for Royal Enfield because, this was a new venture for them, sort of expanding the model range, moving into different countries, and it was to be expected that there were going to be some logistical issues, but here we are 7 years on, and actually, it's no better. Dealerships are few and far between, especially if you live in the north of England and the UK. They don't seem to keep much in the way of spares in the country. Everything has to come from India, and it takes such a long time with customers, viewers, telling me in comments to a recent video that 10 months, 12 months is not unheard of for a warranty claim to be settled. And of course, the scarcity of authorised Royal Enfield dealers means that for a lot of people, the simple task of getting your bike serviced is a bit of an issue. Now, right from the start, going back to when I first got the Interceptor, I'd always vowed that if they brought a classic version of the 650 series out, I would snap one up immediately. And then last year I got my hands on one for a month. I tested it thoroughly, and although it was a decent bike, it had some handling quirks, and the DNA just wasn't there for me. It didn't quite fit the classic 650 bill, and I found that an instant turn off. I just wasn't prepared to put my money down on one, and the thing is, the price has crept up quite a lot too. I mean, for example, the Interceptor 650 now starts at just over £7,000. That's an increase of about £1,500 in 7 years. So my consideration for a channel bike this year switched to the Bullet 650, something which I thought was much closer to the original sort of ethos of the Royal Enfield Bullet range. It fitted better. And then last year, Honda threw a spanner in the works with the GB350S, something which is much closer to my heart. You know, it's more like the bikes I used to ride when I was younger. You know, the Royal Enfields are a modern classic, but they're from an era long before I was born. And although, you know, there was an attraction there for me personally, the attraction to Japanese bikes of, you know, the late 70s, early 1980s is much stronger. And not only that, you could get a better quality motorcycle with longer service intervals, and we'll come on to that in a moment, for less money, along with a much more comprehensive, longer warranty and the assurance of parts being available within the week, if not instantly. And of course, Honda have a huge dealership network. There's one in just about every major city and town, so you don't have to travel far. And other Japanese manufacturers are doing a similar thing. The landscape is changing. So, last year I bought the GB350 and I've never looked back. It handles and performs better than any of the Royal Enfields that I've ridden, and I've ridden just about all of them. I've had zero quality issues, and of course they have this very attractive servicing package. For £300, it covers your servicing for 3 years. Now, while I was there, I spotted the Honda CL500, and there's something about it resonated with me. It sort of reminded me of a military dispatch motorcycle from the 1970s, again 1980s. It's sold as a modern classic, although in my mind I'm not really sure it is. Apparently it's based on the CL off-road models of the 60s and 70s, but that doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to me that it's not a modern classic or it is a modern classic. The point is, it's a traditional roadster. The configuration is exactly the sort of bike that I go for, and I couldn't get that bike out of my mind. The service intervals are a very generous 8,000 miles, with the valves not even need looking at until 16,000 miles, and the service package is £600, and that covers you for 3 years of servicing, including your valve clearances. And the thing is, the big fly in the ointment for me is that it's only £5,700, or just under £5,700. It's a good £1,000 cheaper than the Bullet 650, although you know, on paper the actual performance figures, power output, etc. are very, very similar, and it fits into a low road tax bracket, so it's slightly cheaper to run. Now, I considered this bike very carefully over the last year, but, you know, my loyalty and my heart lies with Royal Enfield. Yes, it's a more expensive bike. Yes, I know there might be one or two quality control issues with it, and yes, I know that warranty is a big issue with Royal Enfield. The service intervals are quite a bit shorter at 6,000 miles. Or so I thought. I started to look into things a little bit more closely, and subtly, since the Interceptor was introduced back in 2019, Royal Enfield has shortened the service intervals. Now, this is exactly the same 650cc oil air-cooled twin-cylinder 650 motorcycle engine as we had in the Interceptor back in 2019. Nothing's really changed. Back then, you had to have an interim service, which wasn't really a service, it was a checkup, basically, a pre-ride inspection at 3,000 miles to make sure everything was tickety-boo, and then you had your main service at 6,000 miles. Now, your first service is at 300 miles, and that at the time included your valve clearance checks, which often made this quite expensive. I've heard people say that, you know, the first service was £350. That's more than half of what you can get the the Honda service for 3 years, and that's in the first 300 miles. But now they've changed the service interval to a rather strange 4,660 miles. They've reduced it by 1,400 miles, and that includes your oil, your filter, and your valve clearances. So, yeah, that's quite a big change, and it's going to make the bike more expensive to run. This bike now has to be serviced at pretty much twice the rate of the Honda. Now, I'm sure somebody will chime in with an example, but I'm not aware of one. I've never known any manufacturer shorten the service intervals on an engine. There's only two reasons I can think of for doing that. One is price gouging to get dealerships more money on servicing, because maybe 6,000 miles they thought they weren't making enough money. Or they've discovered a problem with the engine that means it requires servicing more often. It's perhaps not quite as bulletproof as we were led to believe, or as Royal Enfield believed it was. Either way, based on the average charges for a service for these 650s that I've had given to me by various viewers over the years, in your first year alone, that's going to cost you between £500 and £700 for servicing, unless you do it yourself, because let's face it, a lot of us can't easily get to a Royal Enfield dealership because there's not many around. But then, looking through the warranty terms and conditions, it seems that Royal Enfield is not as keen on people servicing their own bikes or getting them done by a non-authorised dealership as the once were, if you want to keep your warranty. Royal Enfields are no longer the cheap value for money brand that they used to be. They now seem to be charging premium prices for what, let's be honest, I'm going to tell you the brutal truth here, they're not premium motorcycles. They're good motorcycles, they're reliable motorcycles, but they ain't premium, not yet. I remember Siddharth Lal several years ago saying that, Royal Enfield is a brand of motorcycles built for motorcyclists, but this now seems to have morphed into a sort of Harley-Davidson-esque lifestyle brand. Now, that didn't work out very well for Harley-Davidson, and for me personally, it's starting to cloy. I don't really want a lifestyle brand motorcycle, a motorcycle that dictates my lifestyle, because that is, after all, what a lifestyle brand is all about. I'm looking for a motorcycle that fits in with my lifestyle. Royal Enfields in general, in my opinion, are now way overpriced. You're paying through the nose, but you're not getting the value back in the way, the build quality of the bike, etc. I think where most of this money is going good chunk of it is back into marketing to sell even more bikes to more people. The whole model of Royal Enfield now seems to have switched to just bulk sales rather than quality and service. I'm at a bit of a crossroads with the next channel bike, as you can probably tell by the way I'm talking. I want value for money and I want good service to back that up, and I really don't think that Royal Enfield fits into either of those categories at the moment. I think they're way overpriced, underspec'd, with a manufacturer backup and customer care that really isn't fit for purpose in 2026. I just don't think Royal Enfield is bringing enough to the table to justify the prices or the level of after-sales service that they're capable of providing. Now, just to play devil's advocate for a moment, if you're going to be spending this kind of money on a modern classic, you may as well do it properly. For about £1,000 more than an Interceptor or a Bullet 650, you can get a true legend from Kawasaki, the Z650 RS, styled so uniquely on the, legendary motorcycle of the 1970s that had more sex appeal than Debbie Harry in a short see-through dress. Backed up by Kawasaki's famous customer care, dealer backup, authorised dealer and parts availability. I just think Royal Enfield's gone too far with the pricing. Now, I'm sure this video is going to ruffle some feathers, but times change, and when things change, it's up to me to talk about it, and that's what I'm doing in this video today. Now, if you're going to be insulting, just remember, I'm just as capable of being insulting back. I haven't had the opportunity to test any of these bikes that I've spoken about today as yet. It's something that I'm focusing on for the future. Let me know your thoughts on this subject. Do you think Royal Enfield is getting a bit too big for its boots and charging too much money with the level of after-sales care that it can provide? Or do you think they offer good value for money? I would be interested to know. Once again, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this and my other videos, and in doing so helping to support this channel. I really do appreciate it. I'd also appreciate it if you'd hit the like button, hit the hype button if it's available to you, and consider becoming a subscriber to this channel if you're not already a subscriber. You can help me out in other ways via my Patreon page, PayPal donations, details of which are in the video description down below, or you can use the super thanks button. Not essential, but it is appreciated. I will of course be back on Friday for an update on the DAX 125 pillion test, so I'll see you then if you're riding in this glorious sweltering weather that we're having at the moment. Ride safely, and I'll see you soon.